everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Contextualized Teaching and Learning for Integrated Education and Training, IET. Today's webinar is generously sponsored by Essential Education, and today we have Charlie Weeks, who's going to share a few words with us. Charlie.
Thank you. All right, give me just a second here. Yeah, thank you, Coabe. My name is Charlie Weeks, and I'm the Director of Client Success at Essential Education, and we're happy to be sponsoring this session for you all today. For those that aren't familiar with Essential Education, we're a publisher of both digital and print curriculum. Our programs are in use across the US, and we have all adult learners in mind. None of our material is repackaged K-12 content, and everything is built to engage the adult learner and make an educational pathway as efficient as possible. We have learning programs in ABE, HSE, workforce readiness, life skills, and college prep. I know you all are here today to learn about contextualizing instruction for IETs. Our courses have contextualized content through specific workplace connections lessons, and each of our units start with discussions between learners, contextualizing the learning objective to real-life issues and problems. Our academic suite of products includes both ABE and HSE academies. These programs are built directly on the assessment standards published by GED, HiSET, TABE, and CASAS, and the correlations are easily found in our LMS. And each academy uses an adaptive learning engine to ensure that students are studying the right content in the right order. You can even bundle these two levels together so that you can serve students from a second grade level all the way through college prep. Our workforce products truly help build the skills that students need for life and work. Work Essentials provides digital badging through Credly so that students can demonstrate workplace soft skills that employers want and really separate themselves from the masses. We have Computer Essentials that help students develop key digital literacy skills that are required in today's workforce. And personal financial literacy is taught in our Money Essentials course to help students understand their finances and create wealth. And finally, we have our Dreamcatcher course, which overlays all of those as career and life planning tool. As your partner in adult education, we feel compelled to do more than just sell you things. And so we create a wide array of free resources that can help your students, your educators, and administrators. Most recently, hopefully you've heard about this, but we just published an Implementing Distance Education Guide. We presented at COAB and have had a few other webinars recently. This free resource is a working journal or guide to help educators move their distance education offerings forward. So we're really excited about it, and hopefully you are as well. Our professional development courses are available, and we made those with the adult ed teachers in mind. We have 3 self-paced courses and a host of free webinars on a wide variety of topics. Many of you know Dan Griffith. He's normally here presenting and doing this today. He does the tweeds, the bi-monthly webinars, Tuesdays with Essential Ed. If you've not heard of those or been a part of those, I would highly recommend visiting our website and clicking on professional development, and you can register to join one of those. So we're often asked, what makes our programs different? Well, here are 5 things that we truly believe separate us from our competitors in the field. Our programs are prescriptive and individualized to the needs of each unique learner. Our content is more than just quiz and practice, and the curriculum is digestible into bite-sized pieces while reinforcing skills and teaching along the way. All of our courses are mobile friendly, and we're also 508 compliant. Every learner, regardless of their disabilities, deserves the opportunity to access great quality content. And finally, our academies are now available in Spanish as well. So I just want to say thank you, COAB, for letting me take the time to present and share with you about Essential Ed and great things we're doing. I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to you, James, and to Ron. Thank you.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. And thank you to Essential Education for sponsoring today's webinar. We appreciate the partnership and friendship. So thank you very much. All right, so our presenter today is Ron Cruz. He is the coordinator of the Carib refugee program under Hillsborough County Public Schools in Tampa, Florida. He is a national trainer, a consultant, and content developer for GED Testing Service, ACE of Florida, and ACE of IPDAE, specializing in instructional strategies, curriculum, and assessment of adult education. He has over 18 years of experience in mathematics education and educational leadership, and is also currently serving the Florida Department of Education Division of Career, Technical, and Adult Education as a subject matter expert in ABE and ASE mathematics, integrated education and training, IET, and corrections education. So if you could give him a warm welcome by letting us know where you're calling in today from in the chat section. If you have questions during his presentation, feel free to go ahead and put those in the Q&A box. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ron. Thank you.
Thank you so much, James. I am sharing. Go ahead and share my screen. Good afternoon, everyone, for taking. Thank you so much for taking precious time in your afternoon to tune in to today's webinar sponsored by Essential Ed and through the leadership of COABE. My presentation today is going to focus on IET, specifically the instructional expectations in the implementation of integrated education and training. So again, welcome everyone. My name is Ron Cruz. I'm coordinator of the Caribbean Refugee Program. My contact information is listed over here, and I'm providing you my Florida IPDE email account because that organization, Florida IPDE, is also responsible for developing through the use of Florida Department of Education leadership funds to develop and design this workshop session. So without further ado, let's go over our agenda for this afternoon. I'm going to briefly go over IET, what it is, for those of you who do not know what IET is or are new to adult education and just getting into IET. Provide you with a brief instructional background and research on contextualizing instruction. Then we're going to slowly dive into the instructional expectations with regards to targeting reading and language skills and mathematics skills. So I'm compartmentalizing it that way. And then towards the end, we're going to talk about some very useful resources that I've used and asked my teachers to use, and all of the teachers here in the state of Florida to use in developing contextualized activities specifically designed for IET. And that tool is called the GRASPS concept wheel. We also developed a very similar template for lesson planning that incorporates the GRASPS concept wheel into our lesson planning process here in the state of Florida. So I'm here to share that with you. All of the resources that I'm sharing with you is viewable and downloadable through the COABE website for this webinar. And also you can go into the Florida IPDE website to download these as well if you have a portal account. This session, you will be not only receiving a copy of a PDF copy of the handouts for my slides today, I'm also providing you with a workbook. So I'm gonna just quickly show you what that workbook looks like. Looks like this. It's got all of the content that I could not spend, an infinite amount of hours talking to you about because of the time limit we have for this session. But all of the samples and the templates and the lesson plan ideas and the lesson activities are all outlined in this, including the lesson plan templates that we've developed and as part of our regional workshop here in the state of Florida. So going back to my slides, I just wanted to welcome everyone, but I just wanted to ask you, just to break the ice a little bit here. How do you feel right now, being a member of the adult education community, being an adult educator? How does it feel to become a part of this enormous, powerful community that is transforming lives each and every day? So feel free to type it into the chat how you feel right now. I know it's a very challenging time for adult educators in our society. So think about that and keep that in mind, and then tell us, be honest on how you feel about becoming an adult educator or a member of the adult education community. I'd like to see what you guys are feeling. So I'm going to look into the chat here. Students are great. Wow. Okay. Adult education is all about hope. Awesome. Love teaching ESL students. So keep those comments coming. We'd like to see how everybody's feeling right now. Hopefully you're feeling good about adult education, because what I'm going to share with you is really also very good. It's supposed to make you feel even better. So right now we've got IET has taken over kind of like the world of adult education. It's kind of like the newest buzzword that's coming around, right? Everybody's talking about IET, everybody's collaborating on different ways and methods to promote IET. IET has been part of what we do because of the Workforce Innovations and Opportunities Act. We serve various populations, and IET is supposed to also serve these various populations that we serve in adult education. Benefits of an adult education program is not just be able to get and earn your high school diploma or learn English, but it's just good for mental health. It provides a certain level of happiness for our students and also for you, our instructors. It allows our students and ourselves to build connections and promote those very important workplace preparation skill, which is interpersonal relationships. It improves the self-confidence and self-esteem of our students. And we actually contribute to reducing crime and promoting that lifelong education. And also, the most important actually is here, we are providing opportunities and opening doors to our students, leading them to gainful employment. So if you don't feel good being a part of adult education, hopefully after hearing these things, you feel so much better. And so right now is a very, I would say, challenging time for a lot of our adult education students and also for ourselves. A lot of us are still managing through remote learning or hybrid. You know, there's the fluctuation in the number of cases. Employers are reacting to COVID or past COVID in different ways, but there is some glimmer of hope for our students. There is high growth in jobs. There's a lot of job openings, but counterbalancing that are rent prices and prices of homes. And so there's a lot of things that's happening. It's a mixed bag. But if I would have to kind of balance it out, as actually the economy is kind of making it very difficult for our students, because a lot of our students are now having to work 2 or even 3 jobs in some cases in order to make ends meet, pay their mortgage or pay their rent, or pay basic commodities because due to the inflation. So there's lots of pluses and minuses that's happening right now. And why am I talking about those? Because our goal is to really help our students to survive through these challenges, right? And what better way to help them in this time than to get them into an IET program. So IET program, is really addressing the challenge of how can we ensure rapid achievement of skills for our students so that they can not only learn English and earn their high school diploma, but also be prepared to enter the workforce, achieve those credentials of value that lead to gainful employment, not just an entry-level job. So those certifications and micro-credentials or credentials that they're receiving in a technical training are also very important. It's going to make a lot of difference, especially now that they're having difficult time making ends meet. So for those of you that are new, I'm just going to give you a quick overview of what IET is. So IET, simply put, is combining 3 major components that were usually taught separately in an adult education setting. So it's putting together what we do on a regular basis, us adult educators, which is the academic skills instruction, combining that with employability skills training, which a lot of us already do and blend into our daily instruction as part of our curriculum. But blending in one more component, which is the workforce training. Those three components is not just sticking all three together into one curriculum lot. So these components have to be organized and they have to be sequenced in a way that they work well together and they complement each other. And we do that by developing some single set of learning outcomes or single set of learning objectives. And based on the definition, Octave's definition of what IET is, they have to occur simultaneously. There has to be a definite start and end where both the technical training and adult education or academic skills training are starting and ending at the same time. There has to be some equal and sufficient application of intensity and quality between the two programs. They have to use occupationally relevant materials. And of course, apply that research-based instructional approach that's always expected in everything we do in adult education. And speaking of that research-based instructional approach, the main or the most critical instructional strategy to be applied in an IET setting is what we're going to cover today, which is contextualized teaching and learning. IET, again, just to review, has three of those components. Just think about it as a pie chart. So a third of that pie chart is made up of the academic skills that you teach on a daily basis with your students, braiding that with employability skills, and then adding that third component and how it's going to support workforce training. So students are in an IET program expected to be co-enrolled in both an adult education training program and a career technical education program. So think of it, and the concept of IET should be pretty simple to understand. And I think why didn't we think about this early, right? So you can't really be a good carpenter if you're not really good at manipulating or doing operations and fractions, or you don't know how to measure, convert between different measurement, or you don't have any knowledge of plane or three-dimensional geometry. That's going to be very difficult for you to perform your regular duties as a carpenter if you do not have these basic skills. Or let's depart from math. Let's talk about some reading skills. So if they don't know how to read charts, graphs, instructional plans, work orders, or blueprints, that's also going to be a challenge in performing that job or even completing the certification for that particular career. Or if you don't know how to communicate well with each other, with your coworkers, that's also going to be very difficult. So with IET, it just makes sense, like, okay, can I tailor my instructional objectives for the day, my content-based instructional objectives, in such a way it complements and targets those skills that they're going to need and use for the occupation that my students want to pursue. Same is true with computer, web design, or any type of technology-related occupation. So those, you can't really do a lot of the occupations that's available that pays good living wage without having to master those basic academic skills that we teach every day. So just to give you a quick overview, or just to remind you, like, what are the differences between these three components of IET? So the academic skills, I'm sure you're probably going to be familiar with the mathematics component, the reading components, and language components that we are supposed to teach to our students. These are your everyday academic skills that you teach. Apart from that is the employability skills that we're supposed to integrate alongside or incorporate within our classroom activities in teaching those academic skills, such as applying knowledge, workplace skills, and effective relationships. These are all taken from the employability skills frameworks. And then last but not the least, tying in that third leg of workforce and technical skills. So we as IET instructors must know what they're learning and what's important in the technical training world, so that we can align ourselves in our instruction to what they're learning. And so what we're teaching them is complementing what is being taught in a technical training program, so that we're kind of supporting each other along the way. So just to give you an idea, so let's pick randomly 3 different occupational training programs here. One is brick and block masonry, another is web design, and administrative office specialist as 3 of the random choices that I picked. And these are the things that they're learning. So take a moment and read some of these things that, pick the occupation that you think you might gravitate a little bit towards, or the subject area that you teach kind of blends naturally to this particular occupation. Pick that one, and then analyze the objectives that they're learning, the standards that they're learning in each of these career fields, and think about, is there anything that you're already teaching right now that's supporting or complementing these standards in these specific career fields? So take a moment there, and then if you thought about something, type it into the chat. I'd like to see what do you already teach right now that can be taught in context of these standards that they're learning in a particular technical field. Okay, budgeting and technology can be taught together. Okay, using the technology of, let's say, Microsoft Office, Microsoft Excel, and teaching them the process of budgeting is going to be a really good way to integrate. So digital literacy kind of goes very well with this, with the web development and administrative office specialist. Very good. Thank you for sharing that, that feedback. So a lot of these things that they're learning in the career technical world requires heavy mastery of the basic skills that we're teaching right now. So you, as an adult educator, maybe you're venturing into teaching an IET, or you were assigned, you were designated by your school or your program to be an IET. Where do you start, right? Where do you begin? How do you conceptualize it? So in a process of starting with an IET, the really initial part of that is really examining what you're teaching right now, looking at your own curriculum, and looking at the curriculum of the technical or occupational cluster that you're going to be braided with in an IET. Now that once you've figured that out, looked at both of the standards, and now this time you're going to be looking into any intersection or connectivity between the standards of both programs. And then from those, you can start developing your own single set of learning objectives. But I'm going to walk you through in that process in a little bit. So before we go into the single set of learning outcomes, we need to understand that the main method of instructional approach in an IET program, as specified within the law and definition of IET, is using occupationally relevant materials, right? And the use of occupationally relevant materials and practices in a classroom is what we call contextualized instruction. So this is just, basic definition of what contextualized instruction is, but I'm better able to explain what contextualized instruction to you in a little bit of an example. So you already are experts as an adult educator. You're already experts in contextualizing instruction. I'm sure at one point in time, you've used money to teach certain mathematical operations, including fractions and teaching decimals, and using money as your vehicle to teach the students that concrete representation of the operations and algorithms in mathematics they're supposed to teach. And in some cases, actually in most cases, students learn very well if you're using concrete products and objects to represent things that you use. So that in itself, using money within a particular objective, to teach a particular objective or mathematical objective in class, is one way of contextualizing instruction. So you really want to contextualize instruction to promote engagement, to allow the student to connect to the abstract concept that you're trying to teach. And the linkage to that is what they normally see in the real world, right? And money is something that they see in the real world. They interact with money at all the time, or using basic household products such as cooking tools and baking tools and things like that to represent different types of things, or to do different activities in class to teach particular science, math, or even social studies concepts. Now, in a reading class or in a language instruction, you might incorporate current events, the news, blogs, social media into your in teaching of grammar and communication skills. That is also an example of contextualizing instruction. So putting it in the context, using real world as a context and a vehicle to teach your instructional objective. So you're already doing it right now. It's not something that is foreign or unfamiliar to us adult educators. But in the case of an IET program, you want to be contextualizing not just on real world objects and materials and concepts, but also, most importantly, contextualizing to career specific or career related scenarios or materials. So why is it important to contextualize? Because we are supposed to implement research-based strategies. Here's just a piece of research or pieces of research I'm going to share with you that support contextualizing instruction. It helps makes your the instruction the content that you're teaching relevant to your students. It improves the motivation and the engagement of your students, builds up their enthusiasm and confidence, and builds a connection to further long-term goals in education. Here are other research if you want to read about a little bit more about other research that supports contextualizing instruction in the classroom for whatever age group, adults or even younger kids. These are all the different types of research that's been conducted that can directly support the effectiveness of contextualizing instruction in the classroom. So now let's compare what's happening in a traditional classroom versus what's happening in an adult education IET program. So maybe in your traditional classroom, you will be reading, you'll be teaching reading to your students. You might pick a general academic informational text, maybe something that you downloaded from the textbook or you got online, procon.org, or some really reputable website to use academic text in your class. And in this case, in this example, maybe reading about nonfiction texts about a television, right? But in an integrated education and training, you want to be a little bit more discriminating in what types of academic texts you wanted to select for your students. So for example, your students are learning to, are pursuing web design or web development or computer science and information technology. So instead of inserting general academic texts, you want to filter through those general academic texts and select the ones that have direct correlation to that particular field that your students are trying to pursue in an IET. And in this case, is web development or any computer-related occupation. Now, pay attention to the focus of the instruction, right? So you want to introduce the reading of various literary and informational texts. So in this case, it's more informational text. And then the focus on a traditional adult education classroom is to introduce general academic vocabulary, promote academic language and academic reading skills, right? But in an integrated education and training, you're more focused on occupationally relevant events, right? It's a smaller subgroup of those texts that you're pulling from. And you want to focus not just on general academic vocabulary. Your focus would be more domain-specific terminologies that are widely used and standard in that particular field. You know, how you always talk to, think about, when was the last time you called tech support or you talked to tech support in your school? Don't you sometimes think they speak to you at a different language, right? Because tech people, they always have words and acronyms and terminologies for different things that we refer to in layman's terms. And sometimes when they start speaking too fast to you, trying to explain everything, you'd have no clue what they're talking about, right? Like, can you please slow down? That's because there's a different domain-specific vocabulary and language that's being practiced in that particular field, separate or different from how we teachers talk. So maybe in a traditional instruction, using some general academic text or some general informational text that you're going to use, these are the types of vocabulary words that you're going to be stressing out, right? Pulling directly from the text, these are going to be the focus vocabulary words that you want your students to master and understand. Now, just by selecting occupationally relevant materials, you're going to notice a shift and difference between the vocabulary words that you're picking from in a non-fictional text directly related to computer programming or any technology related occupation. Do you notice the difference between the two sets of vocabulary? And if so, type it into the chat. What do you think? What's the difference between the vocabulary words between traditional instruction and integrated education and training, or IET instruction? So IET is more relevant to the career field, correct? It's more focused on the word and the language of work. It's more focused on the domain. Thank you so much for all of these feedback. Thank you so much. It's words that they're going to be useful for work, but pay attention to some of the vocabulary. Like if you're in a traditional setting, you might not be more inclined to teach the word bug in the sense that what bug meant in the technology world, right? It's not something that you swat with your sandal or you spray with insecticide. Bug in computer language is something different. Or code is different in computer language, and the word search engine is not a physical engine that you actually work on or that you can see operate. So there are differences. The meaning changes of a particular general academic word or vocabulary changes from field to field that students might not be aware of how that word is being used. So it's very important to be discriminating and also select the best text to teach reading in an integrated education and training class. So now in the math classroom, yes, in a traditional setting, you'll be introducing them to plane geometry, how to read graphs and charts like histograms, how to plot points on a coordinate plane, how to measure using basic measuring tools such as a ruler or a protractor. Now, in an integrated education and training, you're still teaching those things, but you're teaching them slightly differently. So do you notice the difference between traditional mathematics instruction and integrated education and training instruction of mathematics? So if you notice a difference, please type it into the chat. I'd like to see what you think. So if you're noticing here is that I'm still looking at shapes on the integrated education and training, but I'm looking at shapes on how the shapes are, how they look in a construction drawing or a blueprint, right? So, I'm going to probably spend some time introducing my students to all the basic shapes But I'm going to have to quickly move through and start teaching them composite shapes, because most of the shapes that they're going to be working on or looking at on a blueprint are composite shapes, meaning shapes that are connected to each other or combinations of multiple shapes of various sizes. Okay, so so things like that. I'm still introducing how to read graphs and charts, but I'm looking at graphs and charts in the context of construction. And if I'm measuring, I would like my students to know and already start using a tape measure, which is a more common tool that they use to measure in construction. If I'm teaching an IET that has something to do with the construction and architecture cluster. And then in the language component, traditional instruction may be teaching students how to write, how to complete forms, or how to write essays, or general effective writing techniques and things like that. But in an integrated education and training classroom, it's more tailored to the language scale and how language is being used in that particular, or what is the function of language in that particular career technical field or occupation. Word choice in, practicing and selecting word choice in the context or within to promote customer service, general workplace language, such as how to call in sick and things like that. Communicating with a supervisor. How do you do that? How do you communicate with a coworker? How do you communicate with a customer? All the different languages that they would need within that career technical field or in the workplace. Of course, both traditional instruction and integrated educational training should have integrated employability skills within the curriculum. We're teaching them not just the academic skills, but also interpersonal communication skills, interpersonal skills, use of technology, especially now, during COVID and past COVID, technology has been very important to access learning, using information, managing resources, all of the important employability skills that employers are looking for in a particular applicant. But in this case, in the IET, the only difference is that you want to be discriminating on the side of that one particular career or occupation in an IET. So you don't want to go general. You want to go focus on a specific career. Like think for example, like what would a resume of construction or architecture look like versus how would a resume for a web developer or a computer specialist look like? It's different. Like if a realtor's resume looks very different from let's say a health science resume if you're trying to apply to become, let's say, a nurse in the medical field. So if you are targeting reading skills for IET, here are the most important skills that you want to be focusing on. Evaluating text in different formats is very important because it's not always going to be in the form of a paragraph. It could be in an email or bullet points. It could be a chart. It could be a flow chart. So knowing how to analyze text in various structures, also looking at the different points of view of different people and understanding those points of view, or going and looking in through the lens of the point of view of who was writing to you, just reading email so that you can really promote customer service in the workplace. So in terms of vocabulary words, we've already looked into the differences of how vocabulary words should be treated in an IET. You want more domain specific or tier 3 vocabulary that you're using and promoting inside the classroom. The highly used vocabulary words in those particular technical fields or occupations that your students are pursuing in an IET program. Here's a practice that I use. Main idea is very important in the workplace. It's used in various ways. In the workplace, they're not going to sit down and their boss is not going to give them like 15 minutes to read the text and find the main idea and indicate the supporting details. It's just in the regular setting. Just think about that. In the workplace, the information is going to come to you quick. It's going to come to you fast. It could come to you verbally. It could come as a poster, or it could be a quick email. And you have to respond, and the turnaround time in the workplace have to be quick. So you want to train the students in how to determine the main idea of information that's being relayed to them in the workplace. So I would start using graphic organizers with students. This one is really, really cool that I use. And then of course, eventually this graphic organizer should be, this is just a scaffold. So eventually I will take away this graphic organizer and they should be able to provide me with the main idea of the text. So here's just an example of a particular text that they might see in either an email or something communicated to them verbally in the workplace. And I would practice this with my students. So something that I would just grab from, so maybe my friend that works over at a restaurant or works over at a Toyota dealership, and let me grab some of your communications that I can use in general for my class for practicing main idea. And here's one example. You can try this out with your students and use the template that I provided to you in drawing down and making sure that students know exactly how to determine main idea in the workplace. In the workplace, they're going to be given lots of manuals, books, step-by-step instructions, guides. So we might want to start implementing and incorporating more step-by-step instruction in reading of informational text in our classroom. Looking at a flowchart. Flowchart is really a very quick but very powerful way of explaining process and procedures to the students. So they're going to be seeing this a lot in the workplace. So if they don't know how to read a flowchart specific to that particular field, then they're going to have a challenge in the workplace. So you want to introduce these workplace, different types of workplace flowcharts and diagrams that you normally just see. Sometimes I would walk through, let's say, a place of work, and I see a flowchart. I'll just grab and take a picture of it on my phone, blow it up into my PowerPoint, and introduce it to the student and ask them, it's like, do you understand what this flowchart is trying to explain? And then we start our thinking and questioning processes from that one particular material. Infographics is also very popular in the workplace. So if you see infographics that, there's lots of infographics online that you can download. This is one that I got from Davis Moore. It's a web developing company for small businesses. And so they developed an infographic for their step-by-step process in handling customers for customized job and work for web development. Infographics are very powerful too because you can communicate lots of information visually and really communicate your main idea across very effectively. It uses it employs effective use of colors and images and layout to really impart the message that you're trying your readers to understand. Here's an example. If you want to try to teach close reading with your students, here's an infographic. They can try it out. Close reading. Try close reading the infographics with your students by focusing them on particular questions about the infographics. What is the most important part? What is the central idea? What is it trying to communicate? Is there a specific design that pops out to you? Who created it? Is there can we credit it to anyone? And who are they? Who are the intended audience? So do what you normally would do on a particular reading passage as you would do on an infographic. In the IET program or in any IET program, they're going to be reading a lot of technical texts. So here are just my, some of the tips that I gathered online. This one is from Nancy Volk. Technical reading by Nancy Volk. These are some of the steps in technical reading that would help a lot. What I would see in a lot of the technical reading supports that I've read online is chunking is something that's really very important. So, practice with your students if they're giving large pieces of text to first start skimming the entire text and then chunking the pieces of information into bite-sized pieces, and then start summarizing and pulling out main idea from each chunk. So that's really my general take. And most of the technical reading supports that I've read online that helped struggling readers survive in an IET program. Because keep in mind, in an IET program, your students might be reading at, let's say, 3rd grade level, and they're co-enrolled in a technical program. So those technical books are written at a college level. So you notice that there is that big gap between the reading level of the students and the reading level of the text that they're going to be reading on the technical side. So you want to match that in your classroom, but at the same time provide the necessary supports for them to be able to absorb and comprehend that high level text as much as you can. So those are that. One good way that I've noticed other people explain in the in technical reading that helps struggling readers is creating a mind map. So what is a mind map? So here's an example of a mind map where it shows just the branching of ideas of all the ideas that they've read within the text. So they start off with the main idea of the entire text, which is going to be at the center of the mind map. And then each individual chunk of the text has its own main idea as well. And those are the branching main ideas. And then outside of the chunks main idea are the supporting details that they've read from the text. So this allows the student to organize their thoughts and comprehend large pieces of text, even though it's they're not reading yet at that reading level. Now, in terms of language, you want to focus on these language skills. Very important in the workplace is grammar. It can quickly change and turn around the meaning of any sentence or word if you're using inappropriate grammar. Spelling as well is included in there. Understanding what the function is of that or of language in that particular field. Like I really know, I've try to emphasize like the function of language in the workplace may or may not be the same function of language in your everyday life. So there's going to be a big difference. Communication at work is very different from communication at home or communication with your friends. Now, in the business world and in the workplace, in the world of work, it's really impossible for us to teach every single word they're going to encounter, right? A lot of the jobs that are going to be created in the future, we haven't even thought of right now. So it's really impossible for you to teach every vocabulary word to help your students survive in the workplace. What's the best way to help them in that, understand different words that they haven't been accustomed to or they're just first time seeing is teaching them the process of using context clues. So that a lot of employers are suggesting, emphasizing, teaching the process of, understanding the meaning of a particular word through context clues. And technology also plays a big part in the language skills. So this is when that technology also comes in and how they communicate in that particular occupation or career cluster. Writing could appear in many, many different ways. It could be emailing your boss, emailing your coworker. It could be emailing a customer. So what are the differences? So show them different types of email, how to, what's a good email to a supervisor look like? What are the good ways to start off and end your email, providing the students with prompts, allowing them to really soak in that workplace atmosphere and the workplace and how the language is being used and promoted in that particular occupation or industry. Teaching them how to complete a facts cover sheet or an incident report, and if an accident happened, work log. Start practicing these types of writing in class, because these are going to be the types of writing or how they're going to apply writing in work in many of the career or occupational industries that they're trying to pursue. In your workbook are lots of templates that I've gathered all together for you in one spot, so you can start already using the workbook and make copies if you want to of these templates, filling them out. If they get paid by commission or by hourly or by the work they've completed, they might want to practice, start using a weekly work log or worksheet where they will have to write different activities that they've done in the workplace. And also, I also incorporate a little bit of math here, time in and time out. I do a little bit of elapsed time activities with that, combining language and mathematics together. Summarizing information is another skill in language that you might want your students to really emphasize to your students. So here are just some summarizing text tips that I'm giving you. Keep in mind that a lot of technical texts have large chunks of text. They have to summarize large pieces of text in a particular field. So it could get overwhelming. So just follow these tips that I've given you and try it out, see how your students are. One important piece of information I would try to emphasize when teaching summarizing information is keeping it brief and writing without judgments. That's really important. That's also very important in our standardized test in the language or writing components, is writing without judgment. So meaning directly writing to what is provided to you in the text, or using the pieces of information that was provided to you, not the ones that you feel are your own personal opinion about a particular text. So just practice different role-playing activities at work. So these are some of the role-play conversation practices that you can practice with your students, different scenarios. Create a scenario, create a stressful scenario, create a pleasant scenario. How do you propose? Let's say you've got a bright idea that you want to propose to your supervisor. How would you go about in explaining that bright idea? Going into handling a difficult customer. So, structuring the language that way, doing some role-playing practice and conversational practice in class would be both beneficial for your students going into the technical training and into the workforce. Email is really a very standard way of communication across right nowadays. So I'm not going to go over each one, but these are just some of the email tips and etiquette that I want my students to practice. I got this from Indeed.com. And these are just general things to prevent aggravating your coworker or your supervisor, or just helping clarify your meaning, because you can easily develop misunderstanding if you don't follow some of these email etiquettes. I try to prevent my students. I tell them it's not about the color. Sometimes pink text is not always good. So if you have any email pet peeves, type it into the chat. I'd like to know. Be very interesting to read about some of your pet peeves in an email. Because an email can really make or break your day. I'd like to hear what your spelling mistakes. Yeah, you don't always have to put it all on all caps and things like that. Very important. Language for employment, this is just to get the job, right? So we're still practicing that cover letter, resume, and job interview practice with our students. So those are still very important. Now, lastly, I want to cover mathematics. So these are the mathematics that I would like for you to, well, that's really important to emphasize in any IET class. Learning how to do and manipulate numbers, and learning the number system, how to solve and think algebraically, data and measurement in that. Now, geometry might be hit or miss in certain career fields, but I've seen that even in the health field, they use geometry a lot. Fractions is very, very common in construction, architecture, and engineering. Expressions and equations are used pretty much in all career fields. So focus on these major domains of mathematics when you're teaching in an IET class. Usually give them a problem-solving template that will help them organize pieces of information in a word problem. So in word problems, I won't give them all the word problems in the book. I would sometimes find myself taking the word problem from the textbook and tweaking it to make it sound or look like it's a word problem from that particular career technical field. There are two very important numbers to employers, and that is time and money. So you wanted to make sure that you're covering the mathematics of time and money and using money. You're already doing it, so you might want to continue doing it, but also teaching them the importance of time and how to manipulate, operate on time. So these are the different mathematics skills that you're going to want to teach when you're teaching through time. So there's many, many ways you can teach time into your regular ABE, GED, or ASE curriculum. Here, I'm just laying it out to you. What are the different topics of math that has something to do with time? So if you want, on the workbook that I've provided to you, I've collated some elapsed time activities and worksheet that you can use immediately, implement into your classroom. That's all included in your workbook. And talking about money, money is another important. These are the different entries and exit points for incorporating money in your regular mathematics curriculum. And then if they're in the field of construction and engineering and architecture and any other fields that has to deal with space or 3 dimensions, you want to start incorporating measurement and the mathematics of space into your curriculum. So emphasizing the concepts of length, perimeter, area or surface area, and volume, and what are the different mathematical topics where you can teach them. Now, in construction, weight is also very important, and this also goes into science as well for ASE students, excuse me. So in this case, these are the general topics for where you can insert mass and weight into your discussion in your daily mathematics curriculum. So lastly, I just wanted to share you some of the resources that I'm going to that I've found very effective in developing a contextualized activity. So when you're creating an activity in an IET class, you want that activity to be solid. You want that activity to integrate all of the 3 components of IET. It's just like playing tic-tac-toe. So you wanted to lay out, okay, let's look at some of the career technical objectives that they're learning, aligning that with what I'm supposed to teach as an adult educator, and then braiding that workplace preparation activity along the side. So there could be many different combinations. So it's just like playing tic-tac-toe. So let's say, for example, I wanted to get an activity that incorporates these objectives together. I want to combine them all and create one solid activity in it. I'm going to highlight them and then come up with just a simple activity, right? So 3 activities that incorporates teamwork, but it also uses their knowledge or applies their knowledge of geometric figures, and also laying out, creating a web page layout. So in this particular simple activity, I'll have to group my students into 3 and then have them sketch or draw a web page, but they're only going to use regular plain geometric figures. So that means all of the sides of their shapes have to be all congruent or equal. And then they have to play around with the layout to make it look vibrant, colorful, and really attractive to the customer. So they can use technology, or they can just draw it on paper if they want to. So that's just my basic activity. But if I wanted to make this activity even more powerful, right? I wanted to lay it out into a template that completes all of the basic components that I need for a well-organized or contextualized activity. And that would be this GRASPS concept wheel. The GRASPS concept wheel, the acronym itself, GRASPS, stands for the 6 components of a contextualized activity. You have to have a goal. You have to state what role the student will be assuming in the activity. You wanted to provide the student with who is their audience, or who they're providing the product of the activity to. You wanted to explain the situation, any extenuating circumstances or conditions to which how you want the students to develop the product. And then the product itself, you want to describe what product they're supposed to make. And then also the last letter would be your standard, meaning what are you looking for? What are you going to be critiquing? What are your expectations in the level of quality of production that your students will be making? So these are the 6 components. In your workbook, I've created a template that you can just simply fill out the 6 components of GRASPS to have all the components of your activity. But just to give you an example, let's say, for example, brick and block masonry is the career technical field that I am blending to in an IET. So here are my activities. So my goal is to use the different parts of speech, describe and explain different hand tools. The role of the student will be the master mason. The audience is an apprentice, which is going to be another student that's going to be playing that role. And the situation would be they are going to train or model or demonstrate to the class them as a master trainer, training this apprentice on the different basic hand tools, or orienting the student or another student in the different uses of the basic hand tools in masonry. So it's going to be an oral demonstration, but I'm also going to ask, because I want to incorporate writing in it, I'm also going to have to ask the student to develop, let's say, a glossary of different hand tools. So that's going to be the written handout. And then the criteria for success, or the standards, what I'm really going to be looking for is proper use of terminology and vocabulary in developing not just the written handout, but in demonstrating the different uses of the hand tools to the apprentice or to another student. I want my students to be using complete sentences, and I also wanted to see that those sentences flow and are clearly understood by the other student that they're demonstrating to. So now in this case, I have all components of my contextualized task. And I also wanted to, there's a section on your template where you can also identify and emphasize what workplace preparation activity you want to also demonstrate. So in this case, I'm also looking for some teamwork, some real sense that you guys are working together to make sure that there is accountability for both of you in the workplace. So from that activity simple activity I just thought about, aligning the 3 different components of standards in an IET, you can fill it out and go into the template. I think the template in your workbook is on page 3. And from that, you can easily develop your single set of learning outcomes from the contextualized task that you've developed. I've given here some more examples. This one is for web design. another example of if you need more examples to see how to use the the grasps concept wheel, here's another example. And here's another example. This one is for web development. So you can vary the level of expectation. It doesn't have to be super complex. It could be as simple depending on what level of students that you are teaching in your IET class. And now from that point, you can create the single set of, because your contextualized activity has all the components of IET. It has the academic skill application. It has the career technical skill application. And you also have that workforce preparation or employability skills. You can, from that activity, develop your single set of learning outcomes, because the single set of learning outcomes simply states how all the components of IET are supposed to play out together in a particular lesson or activity, how they're supposed to be organized and how they're supposed to be functioning together. So what I normally would do is I would use the concepts grasp wheel, actually align the standards first, then go into my concept wheel to develop my conceptualized tasks. And from the conceptualized tasks, I develop my single set of learning objectives. So you want to have so many single set of learning objectives within your IET. So again, like I said, from that simple activity, I can develop my single set of learning outcome or single set of learning objective, summarize it a bit, make more precise use of terminology into the template, and then complete that grasp concept wheel. From that grasp concept wheel, you can also develop your lesson plan. So in your workbook, I've included the lesson plan template that we've developed in the state of Florida that we want our teachers to use. This is our template that has all the little bits and pieces, check off boxes you want to have in planning an effective IET lesson. Feel free to use it. There's a section where you can indicate your single set of learning outcomes. And there's a section where you can separate the basic skills, the workforce training outcomes, and also the workforce preparation activities in there. So please try to explore that and use it as needed. More information on IET is located on the IPDE website. The website is www.floridaipde.org. And you'd want to go into the Adult and Career Pathways channel. That's where we store a lot of our IETs. Florida has already so many great IETs that we've developed with single set of learning outcomes. If you want to see what those are, visit the Adult Education Career Pathways channel of the Florida IPDE website. A lot of the information there, if you have a portal account from Florida IPDE, we have e-learning, e-training courses that you can take on IET. Just make sure you visit that e-trainings catalog. We've got sample resource activities that are aligned to specific career fields within that, and you can find these under our matrix section of the IET of the Florida IPDE website. Lots of information there. And if you have any questions, feel free to type it into the chat or in the Q&A bar, and I'd be happy to collect the questions at the end. Unfortunately, we are out of time, and I will try to respond to them. I'm going to ask James to send me an Excel summary of these questions so that I can respond to you directly with your questions. A webinar poll is being posted right now for you to complete. I really appreciated your attention this afternoon, and hopefully you enjoyed my presentation. I'm turning it back to you, James.
Ron, thank you so much. That was a great presentation, a lot of engagement, great information. Thank you so much. Thank you again to our sponsor, Essential Education, for today's webinar. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I hope everybody has a great rest of the week and a great rest of the day. Thank you so much. Thanks, Ron.
Thanks, James.